My name is Jolene. I'm going to be talking about the 6 stages to launch new products for growth. It's been 2 years since I've done public speaking, so maybe I'm a little bit rustic, but bear with me. First, maybe a little bit about me. I'm CMO at Kloom. Kloom is an online fitness tool where you can join group sessions with a live trainer and get live feedback. In the pandemic, it was very hard to do group sessions, so we developed actually software that makes it easy to follow online group sessions and online group trainings and actually get the right feedback you need to improve on your fitness. As you all know, I will be the only marketeer speaking here today. So I'm trying to bridge the gap a little bit between product and marketing. So I will be coming at it from both ways because it's really nice that we just had the conversation about who owns growth. And I totally agree that growth should be owned by multiple teams in the company and it should not be siloed because it requires different skill sets. So I've been working with tech and startups for the past 10 years. Passionate about B2B, passionate about customer-centric, product-driven growth. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about launching additional products for growth. I've always tried to build great products. I think everything starts with great product. And it also makes my job as a marketer so much easier if there is a great product, because if there's value for the customer, you're actually solving a problem, then I don't need to do that much. I can just tell the story and people will start buying your product. So product-led growth, as you all know, is growing really fast. If you look at the companies that have grown through product-led growth, it has expanded a lot in the past 10 years. And one of the things, product-led growth you can do through very different ways, but one of the ways you can do through is actually through launching additional types of products. So I will talk about the 6 stages. I know I only have half an hour and probably will not dwell into all these slides and resources that I use too much. So if you have any questions later or you need the resources or want them, let me know. I can hit you up later. So let's start. Step 1 is define your goal. So there are a lot of different types of products or additional products you can create, but they all serve a different goal. So if you want to, for example, create a lead magnet, that's most of the time a free product that is used as a lead gen tool. It has a different kind of functionality that if you, for example, would create a model. So a product that is an add-on and has a different kind of pricing model to it. But also if you want to create products for new markets, for example, if you want to tailor your product to a different audience, or if you want to tailor your product to a different country or different industry, these are all different types of goals. If you want to build new revenue, if you want to build retention on expansion, or if you want to do lead gen. So first, if you start thinking about, okay, we want to build additional products, think about the goal that you actually would like to serve. So a good example for lead magnets, probably you'll know them, HubSpot and Ahrefs. I use Ahrefs a lot. It's actually an SEO tool. They offer a lot of free, very easily usable tools, which make you want to buy the tool. So it's actually a good example. Then modules. Modules is actually an add-on, kind of add-on on your current product. And Intercom is actually a great example of, add-ons that you could add into your pricing. And I think it's a nice way to look at how can you add, except of your main product offering and building on that product offering, how can you add small little add-ons that could actually increase your revenue and also the expansion and the retention of your customers. Then new markets, actually an example for Kloom, the company that I'm working for currently. B2C, we're actually a B2C company, but what we notice is when talking to HR and talking to companies that B2B is also a very interesting angle. People are starting to work remote. They want to offer great perks for their people to stay at the company. So what they're doing, actually, they want to find those great perks so that people stay at their company. So we started testing a B2B offering, which meant that we needed to change our product offering and change the different types of workouts that we were offering to companies. So that's an example of new markets. So last but not least, new products. What you can also do is just expand your offering to different products, completely different. So, for example, Google is a great example. Google is everybody knows Google, but they are originally a search engine, and they started to build a phone, Google phone. Uber Eats is also a great example. They build onto their strengths. They're a delivery platform, and first it was people, and now it's food. So, but this is the hardest thing to do. Product-led growth is really, it's great to do, but it's not as cost efficient as other things. So, think about what type of product you would like to build. Then sometimes it also can be both. I also worked at Impraise. Impraise is an HR performance management platform. And we built Teambase, which focused around bringing the HR processes that are normally done by HR to managers, because we believe that managers are way closer to the employees, and some of these processes should be run by them. This was a product that was in a new market, but also a completely new module, because we have never done something like that before. So sometimes some of these products can also be both. So step 2, just like you guys talked about in the last talk, who owns growth? I'm a firm believer that growth should be owned by several different disciplines. You have brand, you have performance and product, and they all come together. They bring different skill sets, they bring a different viewpoint, and they should work together to build for growth, to sell for growth, especially if you look at it across the funnel. There are different expertises across that funnel, and as you can see here, there's a lot of cross-collaboration happening within these different areas. And that's why I think it's super important that you always have multiple disciplinary teams. So just to give you a little bit of idea, at Impraise, this was the growth team that we had that launched Teambase. So we had a senior growth manager who reported to me. Then we had a combination of UX, product, data, customer success, and even front-end developer that would help build this product, launch it, iterate it, and make it better. So, the third step to launching additional products is really do your research. It sounds so cliche, but a lot of the times, especially companies that have been there for a longer time, I know there are quite some bigger companies here, at one point you think that you know your customer and you know what they want. But it's very important to keep on doing your research, do the competitor research, talk to your customers, do industry studies. Not just start building because you think you know what they want, because most of the time they want something different, and it's very good and important to start talking to them. Go back to canvases is also a really good one. I think a lot of people start with it, but never go back to them, especially if you want to launch additional product. I think it's important that you do go back. You do set things up from the start, go through it. Don't be scared to use them. They're really good. They're really good at ordering your mind and just have the idea of, okay, what's the additional product that we would love to build? Here's a quote. I have 2 very cliche quotes, but I did put them in there because they are very true. You got to start with the customer experience and work your way back to technology. Talk to your customers. See what they want to know. Especially from a marketing perspective, we love our personas, right? But personas are not enough. I want to give you a very small example. This is a 72-year-old male, British, white, self-employed, married, owns a mansion, lives in London, interests sports, travel cars, and dogs. That's Prince Charles. But it's also Ozzy Osbourne. I don't think they have a lot in common. Maybe, I don't know, some healthcare issues or a prostate medicine, but apart from that, they probably have nothing in common. So don't go about your personas. Don't just go about your personas. Talk to your customers, figure out what they like, what they don't like, and what they want. One tool that I use quite a lot, probably most of you know it all, Jobs to be done, is more looking towards people want to achieve. So what do you want to achieve with your product? What is the job that they need to do that we can help them with? And also the 4 forces. So the 4 forces, in short, there are always 4 forces pulling your customer. So on one hand, you have from the current situation to the new situation. So they are pushed towards a new product because the current situation is not working for them, but they also have habits. So they're used to their current solution. And on the other hand, you also have the magnetism or the excitement of something new, but on the other hand, the anxiety of something new. If you start to build a new product or an add-on or something in that space, do this model. Work it out for your customers. See what they could fear. See what they could be scared about. But also what excites them and what makes them happy. Prioritize, validate, and build is step 4. So once you have that great list of ideas or you have an idea of what your MVP should look like, then it's very important to start prioritizing it. And most of you know these different kind of models, but there are hundreds of them out there. But do think about the impact, the effort, the cost, everything you do, especially with an MVP and with bigger organizations. At Impress, we had the same. I had a very different idea of what an MVP should look like than my CPO. So it's very important that you talk with each other, define and align on what that MVP is, and also communicate that to the company and to your customers. Then another point, build, test, iterate, and validate. Especially your multidisciplinary team is very important in this. This is where the different types of skill sets actually really come together. I think it's very important that even if you don't have an MVP yet, start testing. If you have an idea, build a landing page, do a smoke test, start testing if the customer is actually looking for this before you start building a whole MVP where nobody's waiting, like nobody wants to have. So really use marketing, use sales, use all these different departments, customer success to start testing and validating the assumptions that you have for an MVP. So one tool that I like using for defining new MVPs is the Kano model. I don't know if people have actually used it in the past. I see some nods in the audience. The Kano model actually thinks about 3 different elements, namely basic features, performance features, and excitement features. So basic threshold features are features that you need to have in your product. Otherwise, people will not use it. Sometimes it can be GDPR or other related stuff. Performance features are actually very much the driver of your product or of your MVP, or can be both. And excitement features is what sets you apart for the competition. And this can be in one MVP, but it's always very important to think about how does that look like. So for example, at Impress, we built Teambase, as I told you before. One of the threshold feature for us was the data needs to be anonymized, right? Because you're doing surveys and you're doing a tool with managers and employees. An employee will never give their honest feedback if it's not anonymized because it's their manager. So that's a threshold function for threshold functionality for them to start using it. The performance features in our case were actually running the practices that normally HR would run and making sure that they were done successfully. And then the excitement features were actually built around how can we make managers better? So not just getting the data or having a performance review and getting stuff out of it, but also how can we help managers to become a better manager? So those were the excitement features. And you always start at your thresholds, then you build them up because excitement features are always the hardest one to build. Step 5, don't forget pricing, especially also with an MVP. A lot of people don't think about it beforehand, but think about it after they built the MVP. Sometimes that's fine, but it's always better, in my opinion, to look at it beforehand. Lead max is not so much of a problem because most of the time it's free and there's a low barrier to entry. However, modules, new markets, and products are actually, they do need to be incorporated into your pricing. And I think it's very important that before you start launching your MVP, you start thinking about what kind of money would I like to make with this add-on, this tool. So Pipedrive, I put some examples in there. So Pipedrive is a great example for add-ons, modules. Check it out if you want to get some inspiration. With Clume, we also tested different pricing models, especially for new markets. New markets, it's a harder thing because most of the time it's or a new industry or it's a new target audience. So then also important to start testing your pricing. If you want to find the right price point, actually the Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter is a good one. It's a Dutch scientist or economist. It's a survey you send to people or to your users where you ask about the new feature. Was it a good, actually you describe the solution and you ask like, what price is a good value for money, so cheap? What price is so cheap that you doubt the quality? what price is expensive but still worth buying it, and of course, what is too expensive. And if you see that nice little square, you actually get a really good price point in what range you should start pricing your new tool, MVP, whatever you want to name it. Most of the time with an MVP, or if you're a more young company, you start from scratch, go more on the cheaper side. You can always increase your pricing. Decreasing, yeah. Then last step, launched successfully. This is my other cliche quote, but I think it's very, very true. If you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late, by Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. It is very true. I've worked with so many startups in the past and scale-ups that take so long to launch a new MVP, an additional product, and it just doesn't work because the moment you've built it or your competitor have built it or your customer already wants something else. So don't be scared to just do a soft launch, roll it out, and see what happens. Well, if you are launching, one of the things, of course, is very important, do you do a soft or a hard launch? I would always go for a soft launch, especially with MVPs, because you just want to test and see how people are responding. But also think about the landing page, the messaging, the value proposition, all the things that you would like to do. Actually, on this link, there's a template of how Intercom does its launches. It's quite extensive, but it's a good idea to give you actually a good idea on how you should do a launch or a soft or a hard launch. I found it very interesting. Then Smart Insights is also actually quite a good tool to use. Really, this is more from a marketing perspective. So what kind of media you can use actually when you start launching, all the way from the awareness part of the funnel to letting people come back, so more the retention focused. Great products can lead to great things. With Impraise, we built Teambase, which let us be acquired by BetterUp. BetterUp is the biggest leading coaching company in the world at the moment. And they were exactly looking for a tool like this. It got us to be acquired. So that was, for us, a very successful MVP that we could roll out. That's my presentation. If you have any questions, let me know.
My mic never is a thing. Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely. So whether you want to introduce them on Slido or you want to raise your hands and ask questions, we'll do either. Does anybody have any questions? There's one behind it. So what's wrong with decreasing price for a product?
I think you can decrease price for a product. However, if most of the time, you also need to think about the behavior or the message you're sending out. Because if you're decreasing a price, if you start at a higher price and you're lowering it, then it can give the perception that it's not valued enough for this price. So that could lead to people not wanting to buy your product because they think, well, if you're lowering your price, you don't value it enough yourself. Why should I buy it? So of course you can always try it, but be a little bit sensitive with that. Will the slide be, which one? All of them?
Yep, it is up to her discretion, but yes, they will be available if need be.
Okay.
I have a question for you since nobody's asking. So you kind of opened it up because I was on a webinar last year with a couple of guys from Amplitude just about bridging the gap between product and marketing. So can you provide some insight in just how important that is?
I think it's, I just spoke to the product marketing, head of product marketing from Quanto. And I think it's super important. I think product marketing, its conception was in marketing because it's hard to deliver the value story in product if you're not good at writing or telling that story. But I think where product marketing should sit is actually at the product side. Because I think you should think about value from the conception of your product, not just like, oh, we've built this product, now marketing needs to sell it. No, it's a joint collaboration of what is the problem that you want to solve, what is the value of that solution, and then working together and how are you going to solve that problem. So I think it's getting better. But for me, I think product marketing or a marketing department should just sit in product.
Just a quick show of hands. We'll do a 3-part here. How many of you have a product marketing manager that's like your cohort when it comes to product? How many of you have a marketing department with no product marketing? Now, here's a better one. How many of you have a campaigns manager on top of product marketing? Wow. Yeah. So, yep. No, we got a few. That's great. Oh, awesome. Just because I come from a background where I had nothing, and then now we luckily have, like you said, product marketing that sits underneath product instead of marketing itself, and then we, campaigns. But obviously, it came through kind of an acquisition, so it didn't just start from scratch. But we have a couple more questions.
Yes.
So any thoughts on how to do pricing questionnaires in B2B, where N is low? Oh, yeah, N is low in the relation to the...
Whoa.
Whoa.
Hey. They needed some warming up.
Crud. We're going to start from the bottom.
Okay.
Do you have any tips for incorporating freemium into pricing models?
Yes. Well, tips. I think it can really work. I think if you can keep it, I think what a freemium does is you need to show the value, but it needs to be not enough for them to be completely satisfied. So you want to have people that can experience your product. It can be through a free trial or through a freemium, but you need to make it limited. But what is very important is that first touch point, the first time they use it, needs to be awesome. Because if it's not awesome, they will go. So you need to, within a freemium model also, they need to have some kind of like, oh, this is great. But also, for example, with Ahrefs or with HubSpot, all these free tools are limited, but are really good, which makes you want for more. So I think that's for me the most important thing if you do a freemium, that you really think about like, oh, it's not enough, but it's great.
And the quote said, if you're not embarrassed by your launch, then you're launching too late. What about the other side? How to know if you're launching too early?
I think you never 100% know if you're launching too early, but I think you test different things, right? So on one hand, you test, is there an appetite for this solution or this problem that we're trying to solve, which you can do without a product. You don't need product to actually see by research, by doing a smokescreen test, by creating landing pages, by running ads, you can actually see if there's an appetite. But building that first version of your product, there needs to be value. I think that's the most important thing. If you don't have the feeling this will add value to your customer in whatever problem you're trying to solve, then you're too soon. But if it is adding value, maybe it's not perfect, but it's that first step, and you can get ambassadors to start using your tool, give your feedback, and you can learn from it and actually start improving it. I think that's the best way to go. But I think, in my opinion, launching too early, letting your customers know that it is early and gathering feedback is more important than waiting with your launch and launching too late.
This is a good one that could ruffle some feathers. How do you stop stakeholders like the CEO from hijacking the process for building an additional product?
Lots of fights? No. Yes, this is a really hard one. I think, especially me as a CMO, struggle with this a lot in all my different companies that I worked for. I think the CEO needs to be, depends on, okay, first let's start. How big, it depends on how big the organization is. If the organization is a little bit smarter, a lot of the times your CEO is more involved into the process, which can also be a problem, but then you can talk and align. But I think if you set out the right strategy and also the right goals, I think that's why defining your goal is so important. If you can tell the CEO why you're doing this, is it to generate more money? Is it to improve your retention? Then it's easier to do stakeholder management towards your CEO. But it is important to include them into this process, especially if you're buying quite a substantial MVP.
How many of you, by show of hands, how many of you joined an organization like a startup, essentially where the CEO was fulfilling the product role and you kind of taken that over from the get-go? Yeah, so look to these people for experience, man, because they've got plenty to tell you. Would you test a price sensitive? Oh, sorry. Any thoughts on how to do pricing questionnaires? Oh, okay, we're back to this one. Any thoughts on how to do pricing questionnaires in B2B where N is a low to the relation, or in relation to the answer I give, the price it eventually will be is obvious? You might have to reread that one again. 'Cause
any thoughts on how to do pricing questionnaires in B2B where N is low? That I can answer, but I don't understand the relation to the answer I give is the price of... Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question I have here, like I work in a B2B2C environment. So
Yeah.
we have, let's say, roughly about 100 customers,
Yeah.
of which 50 are willing to speak to us about pricing questions.
Yeah.
If we talk to them, then the relationship between the answer I give and what price I'm willing to give is like obvious to what the price eventually will be, right? So there's an incentive to say like, yeah, I max 5K, that's all I'm willing to pay for it. So I don't know, I was just curious if you have any experience in that type of situation where you can say, well, this is a technique that I use in that.
Yeah, so there are two things you can do. I think you can ask for a price, but you can also set a price and ask for an opinion. So I think that's one way to go at it, because if you ask for a price, especially to people who are using your product, they will go low, right? Because they're like, I love this, but I don't want to pay for it. But if you set a price and you ask, like, especially with the Van Westendorp model, do you think this is cheap? Is this expensive? But is it somewhere in between? Then that's still something that's maybe worth paying for, even though I find it more on the expensive side. So that could work. What also could work is if you especially have a new prototype for a product, or maybe a completely new pricing for a product, get some new users on board, do a campaign, do a prototype, bring it into the market, do some usability testing and start calling people. That works as well. It will, when the N is low, it will never be, this is it, this is our price, because it's hard because you don't have a high enough number. But it can give you an indication of the price. And don't be afraid if you've put on a, like, especially for news, Clume is very small. We started a year ago. We just launched our pricing, or we're going to launch our pricing. It's going to change because we're going to launch it and we're going to see if people actually want to pay it. And then you can still play with your price. So what I said before, decreasing your price also depends on how big your company is. If your company is very large and you start decreasing your price, I would be like, like, what's then the value? But if you're young and you're still figuring out, nobody's signing up because your price is too high, I would lower it, of course. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question a little bit. But it does. Okay.
Would you test the price sensitivity on the MVP or the final version of what the product might be?
That's a good one. I would test it on the MVP. Because if you cannot create value in your MVP, it's not an MVP. There needs to be some form of value for your customer in order to start using it. And of course, there's going to be like a little bit of a discrepancy between the final product and the MVP. But that's why it's important to take your customer or your user onto that story. This is what it is right now. This is what it will look like in the future. You can also show how you want it to look like via a prototype, via something else. And this is what it's going to be, but we're here. And this is the roadmap that's going to take us there. So don't be afraid to show a not completely final version to your customers and ask for, what is the value of this?
Show, don't tell.
Yeah.
So, okay, all of these 6 steps seems very extensive. In a sense, it's a lot of work. People, and it's in a sense, it's a lot of work for people. Just for preparation and tracking, what would be a tip for smaller companies?
I think the steps can be extensive, but they also can be very fast. Like, of course, if you start with a new product, then the goal is to get users. Then you don't have an add-on or a new module. It is the module, right, that you're testing. So in that regard, you can still go through these same processes, because I hope when you're building your product, you are thinking about what is that first version of your product, or what does the customer want? And I think for me, if you want to take one thing out of my whole story, talk to customers, like especially for smaller companies. Most of the time they start, they talk, and then 5 months later, they're like, oh, we actually haven't spoken to our customers. Talk to your users, see what they want, see what they like, what they don't like, and see also what your top users are and why they want to use your product. So for me, you can still go through these steps, but just shorten them. And also, like, the multidisciplinary team is only useful for a bigger company. If you're smaller, probably your product manager will do it together with your marketeer and your sales engineer and maybe UXer if you have it in the team. But then as a whole company, you're actually going through this process, because if you start a company, you would also go through most of these steps.
Can we give Jolene another round of applause?